Hey there, and welcome to That News You Care About, a weekly video game news show from the folks over at That Nerdy Site. Today is Monday, June 1st, 2020, and I'm one of your hosts, Logan Wilkinson. Joining me this week is my Phoenix son, Trevor Starkey. How you doing, Trevor?
I'm here. I'm surviving.
Doing all right, yeah.
All things considered.
And for the first ever time on the pod, we have video editor Boy Wonder for That Nerdy Site, Frank Bazzani. How you doing, Frank?
Oh, pretty good. Hanging in there, I guess, honestly.
Yeah, and I think we obviously had a very different episode originally in mind. For starters, we were going to do kind of the PS5 reveal event predictions. That event was delayed in the wake of kind of the, I think, chaos, for lack of a word, of the past week. And so we just wanted to kind of briefly touch on, I think, the thing that is impossible to miss from the news. We here at That News You Care About and the larger That Nerdy Site understand that we are just a video game news show. People like to have fun and listen to just us rant and rave about things. But we find it impossible to say nothing with the current tumultuous past week in America. George Floyd's death is just the latest in a seemingly never-ending tragedy of police brutality and violence against the black citizens of America. And myself, Frank, and Trevor are obviously not experts on the minority or black experience within this country, so we urge all of our listeners of this podcast to do just that. Listen. So seek out voices who are describing and calling out for action and systemic change, and listen to what they have to say. I would point you to, I think, the excellent Spawn on Me podcast from this past weekend as a place to start. I know that Kind of Funny is doing the entire week in the video game section, I know at least, of black content creators out there with Bless on Kind of Funny Games Daily. I know that Ryan McCaffrey with Podcast Unlocked is doing one that'll be co-hosted by, I believe, Khalif is doing that one.
Yep.
And there are all kinds of amazing content creators out there. I know Cameron Hawkins, I saw today, actually, is doing... what's the name of the podcast?
Inside Gaming.
Thank you, Inside Gaming. So there are all kinds of great content creators within the industry to look out for. And then also without the industries, we urge all of our listeners to go seek out and find those voices and hear what they have to say about the current situation. And the hardest possible segue and pivot from that, we are going to try to bring some sort of, levity and some sort of kind of fun to your weekend, hopefully here. We are going to talk about video game remakes. In particular, myself, Trevor, and Frank were each kind of assigned or chosen a game to remake in the modern sense. I know Trevor is doing Final Fantasy VI, I believe. Mm-hmm. Frank, I do not know what you were doing. If you would like to share with the class.
Oh, yeah. The one that I kind of took some passion in this time was Skate or Die for the NES. Like one of the first skateboarding games ever.
Fantastic. I'm all over that then. And then I'm doing a surprise game is what I told the boys. I will be remaking James Bond 007 Nightfire.
Hell yeah.
In 2020. Frank, do you want to go first with how you'd remake this game in modern day 2020? What are you doing?
Yeah, so I guess are you guys familiar with Skate or Die very much? Or?
Never even heard of it before.
I feel like I played it at a friend's house. Is that like you have weapons and you can basically like bash the people that are like racing against you? Am I remembering that correctly, or is that some other NES game that is just kind of like flashing images in my head?
That sounds like you're talking about the great Genesis game Skitchin, where you rollerbladed in kind of a road rash style race, and you had like pipes and bats where you could like beat the other racers.
I mean that. Yeah, I guess that sounds closer. Skitchin is never a thing I would have heard of though, and I'm like the image I have in my head is playing at my next door neighbor's house that did not have a Genesis, so it would have been a Nintendo, but it might have been like a driving game where it might have been Road Rash. Actually, it might have just been Road Rash.
So in Skate or Die is kind of similar, and there is even like parts where you can race. The only thing I don't remember is if you did have weapons, but for this kind of game, that would definitely be in the wheelhouse. Um, Skate or Die was this really, I think, honestly, thinking of the time, like it was innovative, because like you would just start off in a skate shop, kind of like Tony Hawk, and the one of the jokes there is that the guy that runs the skate shop is Rodney Dangerfield. Uh,
Okay.
and so the sprite is modeled after Rodney Dangerfield, but he has like a giant purple mohawk because this entire game is just like all 80s and like punk and hardcore. And when you skate when you leave the shop, it basically goes to like an overworld map that's like a town, and you skate over to like the half pipe, and then that goes into like the half pipe event, and then basically you just skate a half pipe and try to get as many points as you can in like a minute or whatever. And then when that event is over, you just go do the next event, and it's just all skating events. So there's like a downhill jam race. The half pipe's a big one. I think there's a pool you can go in, but there's like almost like 10 events or something you can do. It kind of reminds me of like California games a little bit, if you guys are like familiar with that.
I'm just now
Also don't
seeing
know,
the Rodney Dangerfield with the blue mohawk in my in my research, looking this up, and oof, yeah,
I,
yeah,
I
that's definitely what that is.
That's what in the game. He's called Rodney. He's called like Rodney Recluse or something like that. And he's just Rodney Dangerfield. And what I love is so he's in Skate or Die 1, he's in the sequel, and they also did Ski or Die, and he's in that too. He owns like the ski shop. But so what I love about this is that like it had not only like the overworld map that was just a town you could skate around in, and then it had all the events you could launch, kind of like Tony Hawk, where you're kind of launching into like a level and doing like a minute run in like a half pipe. Skate or Die was also the first skateboarding game you could actually ride a half pipe in. Like that was again kind of revolutionary. Like that was just the first time you could actually just go back and forth on a half pipe. What I would love to see is just this game brought up into like 4K HDR and basically what they're doing with the Tony Hawk remaster, but kind of almost on like a grander scale, because instead of just launching into these missions and kind of running through the levels, I want to see like the open world town that you can just kind of skate through. Like I just want to skate through 80s California, and there's like the jocks over there in their sports car, and then like with and then there's like the punks over there beating people up. The skater kids are just kind of going around.
what this sounds like to me so far is just you want a skateboarding video game set in the world of Bully, and I'm vibing with that so far.
It would be honestly, yeah, like it basically would be that, because what I love about Skate or Die is like the aesthetics, and it has that special sauce that like Tony
Mm.
Hawk has the same thing but for a different generation. And I love taking this and basically just putting it in the 80s. Like it's just taking Tony Hawk but mixing in a little bit of like the Misfits and like Hotline Miami and
Goonies.
like yeah, just these 80s vibes that you don't get in like any other skating game, especially anymore. Um, and what I love about it too is because it's like the old skateboards, like those old oval fishtails, like from the 80s. Um, Basically, yes. So what I would want to see is I just want this open world 80s adventure game where I guess a good spin to maybe say is imagine just kind of skating through like Stranger Things or like the Goonies or something, and then you're just
No,
no.
no, no. I said my question is, now what is the camera perspective on the skater as you're going through the world?
In the original, it's super top down, but in this,
Sure.
I would just say full Tony Hawk. Like we're just going to be behind the skater, and
Mm.
kind of like, or I guess in Tony Hawk, it's like over the shoulder.
Yeah.
Not like Skate, where Skate is like super zoomed in on like the board. Like this would just
Yeah.
be. I'm just saying, take Tony Hawk's gameplay and put this on top of it.
So you'd want it to be like a bit like arcadey, probably too.
Oh, 100%. Like this would be
Okay.
full arcadey. Like you're doing 900s and you're getting all these crazy combos. One thing that would be interesting too, I guess, is because the way Skater Die is designed on the NES is you can't really do like lines and like combos like you can in Tony Hawk. you're just basically doing like, oh, I went up on the half pipe, I did like a 360 and I came back down. So it would be interesting to just try to rework all of this into like the way I picture is just skating through open world 80s, and you roll up to like the half pipe, and then that can launch that. You basically just have the skate park level now that you can just go through, and you can basically just do Tony Hawk levels, like lines and grinds and everything like that. Try to get the biggest combo you can, and then just go back and try to give your high score to Rodney and see what he has to say.
I think this is the most frank pick he could have made. An obscure NES skateboarding game to remake nowadays. I respect that energy, Frank. All right, I'm all here. I'll be day one purchases for you.
I wanted to like almost pick something I felt like would ring out to like other people more, probably stand out or make more sense, but
Nah, forget that.
like it's just a game I played like when I was a kid, and I guess yeah, like when you say it's like, oh, this is right up your alley, it totally just hit like all these check boxes, even though when you look at it, like it got like not even great reviews back then, let alone the fact that it doesn't really hold up now. But I just like can't get past the idea that if you just took this like amazing Tony Hawk level of gameplay and even some of the open world elements they added, like I guess what I'm trying to say is take like Thug 1, but now it's in the 80s. And there's, instead of having all the late 90s like hip hop and punk music, it's like it has more of like a has more of like a Vice City soundtrack. And there's just all this like neon everywhere and graffiti. And I love the different archetypes, like, you know, of like all the high school things, like the jock and the nerd, and then like the skaters and like the prom queen or whatever. Like, I just kind of want to see that mixed in, you know, a little bit of a, God, what is it? I can't think of the movie. It's not the Breakfast Club, right?
I mean,
That
if I
is
see
an
the
80s
Breakfast Club,
movie.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
that is where they've got like the jock, the nerd, the outcast, you know.
All detention together.
Yeah, all in detention together.
Yeah. So, but I mean, my point is like, I imagine just like a story like that, just kind of set in this open world universe where you kind of then just have like all these different missions. And because like with Tony Hawk, you can just roll up and you have all the people you can talk to, and then they eventually added like the cutscenes in the story. And like I just think if you could take that, but again, just basically put it in the 80s, tell that exact same story like from that movie, and just lay skating on top of it.
How in depth do you want this to be? Like, do you want it to be like a 50-hour Tony Hawk-esque open world RPG skateboarding game set in the 80s? Is that what rings your bell here?
I don't know if I would want to go like that deep, because I definitely don't think you could probably hold people for that long. But in like Thug 1, how long, Logan, did you play Thug 1? Like, how long would you say that is? Like 6 hours?
Yeah, 10 hours at the most, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that would be like perfect. Like, just tell a story, and you can still splash the open world around it. And because I still would like to keep the idea that they had of Skate or Die, where you just have that top like overworld and you can launch into the missions and kind of do these levels. But I just think it would be awesome to just have like a 10-hour campaign that just has the story that's like the Breakfast Club, but you're just basically skating through it. And if you wanted to get even crazy, and depending, you know, even if you were like, hey, we actually have money to make this, like you could do like factions style things almost, like where you could try to pick like who to align with, and like the other people try to like knock you off your skateboard while you're
compete
going.
against the rival skating gangs like Brink.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe it's just because I was literally listening to the first season of Ultimate Video Game List Show right now, earlier today. But yeah, I appreciate Frank yet again repping the flag of diehard skater boy forever. So I very much respect that energy. Trevor, thoughts?
I mean, yeah, we since pulling behind the curtain, we recorded that Nerdy Site show yesterday, and Frank and I sat down, and basically Frank had not responded on any of this stuff to the Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 remaster yet, so like that was a good chunk of yesterday, or of the episode that went live today, or a couple days ago if you're listening to this, basically, from this week's That Nerdy Site show. So yeah, Frank just fully in on the skateboarding train this week. I like you kind of touched on it there at the end. I like the idea of like if maybe it wasn't even restricted to solely skateboarding, but you could open it up to like other exports, and you basically get like a Brink type story kind of sandwiched in here, of the underdog having to align himself with the the rival teams, and then ultimately like realizes the value of working with his original crew or something like that. I like the idea of like a 10-hour, especially having just played Maneater, which is basically like a 10-15 hour shark RPG. I like the idea of like a skateboarding RPG. Sure, just have some fun with it. Figure out what little like side quests you have to do, or random events that like fill out the world to kind of help flesh out some of the like gameplay in between the gameplay sections, I guess.
And yeah, because like that's what I think. Sorry, go ahead, Logan.
I was just gonna say, like, I think a good, at least in my mind, like a good like modern equivalent to is I'm picturing kind of something like a skating concrete genie even, but like bigger, obviously, and I think that is something that's also super like exciting to kind of envision.
No, I definitely think like yeah, it sounds awesome, and kind of like especially kind of the way you guys are kind of mentioning it there, and that's why like I really wish it was almost a game that was like gonna come out or was like in development, but like
Sony or Microsoft, please send Frank millions of dollars. He'll make you a new skateboarding game. All right.
man, we need it. This could just be Skate 4, we could just call it Skate or Die 4.
Frank's like, I'll sell it out and just make it a Skate 4 game. I don't even care what the actual name anymore, and I'll just make any skating games. Just give me skating games.
Would you still have a Rodney Dangerfield type character in it?
That's my.
100%.
Who's the modern comedian that needs to be in it?
Well, because so I guess my idea when we were talking about bringing it back was that it would still be in the 80s, but I guess are you guys talking about bringing it back like in modern day, or
You can set it in 1980 still if you want.
but then
You can do
still
whatever you want, Frank.
put a modern actor? Yeah, because I guess people probably I would have no reference point for Rodney Dangerfield. In
Does anybody know who Rodney
whatever.
Dangerfield is now? Do you think
No way.
the Gen Z kids know who Dangerfield is?
I mean, that's a travesty, honestly, but there's no way they do.
I mean, like, even like I'm 35, and Rodney Dangerfield was like past any, like, he didn't really do anything in my lifetime, anything of note. Like he was in a few things here and there, but no, he was so much more like early 80s, 70s, that kind of stuff.
I really enjoyed whenever I have a conversation with you, Frank, because peeling back the layers of you, first is like this rabid skater kid, and then now is like this huge Rodney Dangerfield fan. I just appreciate peeling back the layers of this onion that is Frank.
No, that's definitely a good way to put it. It's so many layers and just different random things. It's like, why do you even know that? Let alone are passionate about that.
Frank, how much is your game going to cost?
Oh, that's a good question.
Are we doing full $60? Where are we at?
I think if this would probably be in that Tony Hawk like $40 range, like especially because like I think this is just the kind of thing you could get in and do the 10-hour campaign on, and we probably don't even we could just do like split screen or something even for like co-op. There's no crazy multiplayer games as a service here.
And then my final question, Trevor may have some, but this is my last one. What studio is making this game?
Ooh, yeah. Let's. Are we going really pie in the sky with that, or do
Any
they
studio you
have to
want.
be a real? Do they still have to be like an active studio though?
Do whatever you want, Frank. It's your rules. It's your playground here.
Then you know who's going to make this game is 2001 Neversoft.
That's a great era of Neversoft. I appreciate that.
It's also funny how that is very specific because that's not like Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 Neversoft. That's like Pro Skater 3,
no.
Pro Skater 4 Neversoft.
Pro Skater 3, which is the best Pro Skater. It is that era of Neversoft.
I mean, Pro Skater 3 has the airport level, so that's the best level ever made.
Yeah.
I can hit, dude. I want to see that level remade. Just as an aside, I want to see that level remade in the remaster or just in anything in 4K. Because I've played that level so much, and I have the perfect line to get from the beginning of the airport all the way to the end of the airport in one combo, like one giant combo. And I'm like, well, just let me do it again, but in 4K.
I always really loved the like suburbs level in that game as well.
Yeah, when you have to break
Also
all the
decent.
pumpkins. Yeah, the
Yep.
haunted house. Hell yeah.
Yep. Also excellent.
Um,
Um, no, go ahead.
my only kind of final thing too, besides because kind of even what Trevor said is like, so obviously we would want to do like side missions, and
Hmm.
like I think that's where like you could even get the most amazing thing because like if you remember, I'm sure Logan, like when in especially as they got later into the pro skaters like Pro Skater 4, like when you accept these
Hmm.
missions, they're always like this weird insane character with just like a random
Yep.
story, or you have like
Yep.
Officer Dick who's just trying to like always push you off the skateboard and like fuck with you.
Hmm.
And that's where I'm like, that's where I think we could get some. That's where I think this would be really entertaining, is where you have like all these crazy 80s characters that are all just constantly like messing with you, or just being like the most insane blown up versions of like, those kind of people.
We have a cameo by Eddie Murphy and Bill Murray just doing their thing.
Dude, that would be awesome.
I'm
Yeah.
ready. I'm ready.
I was like, Eddie Murphy would actually be a good pull to be the guy to work in the shop, honestly. Or
We're
oh,
recruiting Eddie Murphy now.
It's interesting because I was trying to think of like who it could be, and I thought Mike Myers myself.
Ooh, that's late
and
'80s
so-
though. That's late '80s. I feel like.
I mean, like I was thinking like Shrek era or Austin Powers era, like Mike Myers being like, because he just play weird wacky character thing, and just being like, yeah, who's somebody that. Like I'm not thinking like, I mean, in the same way that like it's Rodney Dangerfield but he's got a mohawk in the original game. It's like this doesn't need to be actual Mike Myers. It can just
Oh,
be
no.
Mike Myers playing a goofy character, a goofy skater character or something like that. But yeah, I like Eddie Murphy as the pull.
Yeah.
Instead, I just thought it was amusing that like we both kind of pull or we're thinking of Shrek actors.
Trevor, any comments or questions?
I know. I like a lot of this comes from I just don't have any kind of like real concrete reference points in skateboarding anything anyway. So yeah, I can't. I mean, like, do you? I guess with Tony Hawk being, the iconic franchise there, and most well known, I guess, for its soundtrack and stuff. Do you have a Tony Hawk-esque soundtrack for this? Do you have like 80s punk and ska bands kind of making this up, or are you populating the soundtrack with like modern tunes, but maybe they're modern tunes that are covers of 80s pop punk or something?
yeah.
Was 80s pop punk even a thing?
I mean, that was definitely, there was like the early kind of punk and hardcore, and that's some great stuff because like we would get stuff like we put Black Flag in here, even like I'm sure the timing for the Misfits still works too. Like I would try to go old school with it like that, and try to put like the most amazing like in universe soundtrack together of like,
Get the
okay,
Sex Pistols on it.
yeah, you could be, oh my god, like the Ramones too, like
Hmm.
and like just put all that like is like, okay, so like in universe it's 1988 or whatever, so it's like, okay, we have to have like what would be on the cassette tape mixtape that this guy's gonna, and then we're gonna do like Star Lord where he has like the Walkman and he puts the headphones on and that's how you hear the music.
Yes. Yeah, I love
So
that.
it's like the rock or punk track from Vice City. You basically just pull all of those
yeah.
songs.
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure do that.
And
That sounds.
honestly,
That's the best station.
and so like that's how I think it would be awesome to just obviously have that in, but if we were really going big with it, it would be cool to have like the whole Vice City radio basically, and then you can just kind of like swap between, or maybe like the
Put a
person,
different cassette tape in your Walkman.
yeah, exactly, or like especially like, oh, if there's a part where you're like in a car, like you could like change all the way through the radio or whatever, and then the different groups of people you would run into, like those jock kids are going to be listening to like Cyndi Lauper or whatever, and then we're over here listening to the Ramones, and I think that's like another cool way to also like kind of tell the story.
Or maybe you make that like a collectible in the game. Is you got to pick up like different cassette tapes from like different factions or just like scattered around the world, and that's how you can kind of like fill out your library of music.
I love that because that would be like our secret tapes basically.
Yeah, I'm all about that. Trev, do you want to go next? Do you want me to go next?
I can go next. Yeah, sure. So yeah, Final Fantasy VI is a game that I've definitely especially when like all of the Final Fantasy VII remake stuff was like coming off the ground, and even when it was like rumored or whatnot before it ever officially got announced years and years ago now. Like I've always been in the camp of like I would much rather see a Final Fantasy VI remake or even a Final Fantasy IX remake over a Final Fantasy VII, just because I prefer those games in their original incarnations. And Final Fantasy VI is so often kind of among the, you know, the people who love every Final Fantasy or something. Like Final Fantasy VI is often one of the ones that's held up there as kind of the pinnacle, myself included. But I've never actually thought about like what it would look like until really kind of this exercise you put me on. And it's interesting because I'm of two minds of it. There's like one mind that wants me to take it like the full Final Fantasy VII remake, where you are, taking this 2D sprite based game from like the early 90s and basically just bringing it into 3D, like completely blowing up the world, making it, this crazy vibrant thing. But then I think of how it would translate, and like just because of its size and scope being a Super Nintendo game, it doesn't have these grandiose cities like Final Fantasy VII has Midgar. So like the first town that you like set foot in, Narsh, is basically like one screen long. Like it is one screen wide with some like cave systems that kind of like help really flesh it out. But like you couldn't do a great job of turning that into like this vibrant living city in the same sense. So ultimately where I've kind of like pivoted towards is doing an Octopath Traveler style remake, where you take kind of that art style and you kind of, so it's still going to be largely 2D based, but it is kind of embracing the art style of the original, but giving it a hand-drawn facelift in the style of Octopath Traveler, not like the remastered sprites that they've done in kind of the iOS ports of the of Final Fantasy VI or the Steam port of the game, but like taking the original character designs, the original like sprite models, and doing kind of a like you commission those artists that kind of give it really a hand-drawn feel, and hand-drawn animations to kind of do the combat moves and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the look and the aesthetic that I'd be going for. And then from there, so with that in place, you're not changing too much of the world design itself, or even the character skills and traits. So the other real touchstone for me would be adding a voice cast and doing it as a fully voiced kind of thing. In particular, I haven't mapped out the whole cast, but some of the standout ones that I would have in my mind would be Troy Baker as Kefka, as kind of the master villain of the game, kind of channeling like part Pagan Min, part Arkham Origins Joker. I think he could have a lot of fun in that very mischievous jester, who's just pure chaos kind of role. You can have Ashley Johnson as Tara, who's kind of your de facto female protagonist character. She's kind of your first party member, and she's the one that has kind of a, one of the most consistent character arcs of the game. And then a couple of my other favorites, Locke and Celeste, who Locke is your kind of treasure hunter thief type of character who with a heart of gold, and then Celeste is the kind of imperial, like she was an officer and a general in the enemy's army, but she kind of gets mistaken or believed to be a traitor, and then she ends up joining kind of your Rebel Alliance returners faction. And so have who do I have? Nolan North as Locke. Kind of, he can be Nathan Drake in full charm and swagger kind of mode. Janina Gavankar as Celeste.
Love that pick.
Kind of being a little bit of Iden Versio from Battlefront 2, because she very much starts off like cold, and she was kind of raised and trained to be very imperial, the Empire soldier kind of thing. Elsewhere, I would have there's there's Realm is like a little child character in the game that you get later on, and her grandfather are kind of like some of the like they live on the island of magic users in a world where like magic has largely been overrun by like machinery and steampunk, but they still kind of live the old ways. Realm, as like a I want to say she's like an 11-year-old child or something. Bring in Ashley Birch for that because I think she can have some fun, and she has not like as crazy energy as Tiny Tina, but she is very sarcastic and smarmy, and I think she can have some fun there. So yeah, those are some of the kind of the cast of crew I have in my head. Like I'm sure pretty much all of the other mainstays you have in the voice acting community, I'm sure can be in there. I'm sure there's like Travis Willingham could be Cian, kind of the very noble knight of he's kind of like a Bushido samurai in the game, but he very much the way it was localized, he's very much kind of written as a medieval kind of knight with these and thous, and that's kind of how he speaks. He speaks very formally. I think Travis Willingham could be some fun in that. So yeah, that's kind of where you kind of take the original story and really just kind of like add fully performance voice cast to it to help really tell the narrative, because it's not like it doesn't have much of a choose your own adventure kind of vibe that you see in a lot of modern. It is they're telling a story, and there might be like there are segments where you'll go and do like a section of the story in whatever order you want to do it in, but it's still like you're still experiencing the same story. So yeah, those are kind of the two major elements that I would really kind of touch up on. But other than that, like maybe you throw in some modern aesthetic or modern additions of like extra little side quests here and there. I would, in terms of the combat, one of the things that like Final Fantasy VII really kind of moved forward and really kicked off in the franchise was making like summons a much more dramatic kind of experience. Whereas here they were still kind of a sprite coming in for like a second of imagery, and then like lightning hits the screen or something like that. So I'd include kind of a maybe cinematic a la like a Final Fantasy Crisis Core kind of thing. When you bring in a summon, you can have this very it in kind of like accentuating the beautifully hand-drawn animation. You have a CG animated film to bring in kind of an Ifrit summon or a Shiva or something like that, and you kind of have those kind of beautifully polished Square Enix things. In terms of like who's making it, it would
that was gonna be my next question. Yeah.
Pretty much I would want it to be kind of the Octopath team or the team behind like Bravely Default, because they are the teams within Square Enix that are kind of really carrying the tradition forward of those old 2D or turn-based RPGs in this spirit. I think there also could be like in one of the things I continually tout about my love of how Square Enix has been approaching like the remasters that they've done of a lot of their games, like Final Fantasy 8 and 9 and 7 before the remake, are that they include like little cheats in the game. So if you don't have the time or the inclination to play a 30-hour RPG, having a nice little click of the button that lets you speed up time, or that lets you just not have to worry about health and stuff, and kind of giving you those accessibility options if you really just want to kind of enjoy the story of this game and you don't want to have to grind for hours and hours or something like that in combat. I think those elements would certainly I would want to include those as well. But yeah, otherwise it's largely the same game that you could get nowadays on an SNES Classic or buying on Steam or something like that, just with a kind of a touch up in the face paints and added voice cast, and of course updated orchestrations and stuff as well, but keeping kind of the original score, the original music, and just kind of doing it with a broader orchestral arrangement in the same way that Final Fantasy VII Remake had.
Leave it to you to only change two things about Final Fantasy VI. What's the price? Is $60?
$100.
Um, I would say $60. Well, especially because that's what Square Enix would absolutely put it out for.
Sure,
Square
yeah,
Enix, Square Enix is selling these games on your phones now for $20, and they're 20 years old or something like that. So, so yeah, if they put that much work and polish into it, they'd absolutely sell it as a $60 game, and I think it would be a $60 game if you've got because if you take out the gameplay of it and you've just got this like all-star cast of characters, you've got basically a 15-hour Star Wars epic in terms of like the story and the scope of what happens within Final Fantasy VI. So yeah, at $60, I think it's certainly would be warranted in that price point. And you see that with stuff like Octopath and the Bravely Default game. Well, Bravely Default might be $40, but I imagine Bravely Default 2 or whatever that's coming out, I think that's going to be a $60 Switch game. So,
how many parts is this game?
it would still be like it's a single game. Like in terms of the narrative, you could only break it up realistically into two parts, a la like a Final Fantasy VII remake, because there's very much the like world of balance, and then midway through the game, the Kefka character kind of like wins and destroys the world, and you have to like reassemble your party a year later in this world of ruin that has been completely torn asunder and everything. So like narratively, it would only make sense to really do it as like those two parts, but I would still make it all one game. And given that you're not doing a full like 3D mock-up or something like that, you could do it as a single title and not suffer too much. I mean, like they could have done that for Final Fantasy VII Remake 2, given that like you have the same company making games like Dragon Quest XI that are 100+ hours RPGs. You could still have this very much be a single game that tells the entire story, rather than breaking it out into multiple parts.
Very good. It's my turn. I'm remaking Nightfire. And after much thought, after much deliberation, I'm going to come right out with the studio first. I'm doing the opposite of this. Treyarch is making my Nightfire game.
That's an interesting one over Infinity Ward or Sledgehammer.
Oh, it's easy. Treyarch makes the best Call of Duty games for starters. But more importantly, because my Nightfire game is a Black Ops-esque James Bond Nightfire game.
I like this.
Yeah, it is. It's dealing with like kind of the double crosses of Nightfire. It's a darker, grittier Nightfire with some of the charm still in there at moments. I think the effects of the Daniel Craig kind of darker, more somber James Bond will bleed over into this game to make a darker, grittier Nightfire. Dominique is coming in there. She's being awesome. We're going to get James in it himself. We'll get Daniel Craig to voice it. That'll be the last thing he does. I think that I want... and, like, to be fair, like, Activision has, at various different times, owned the James Bond license in the video game realm. So it's, like, not even that much of a reach. They come in, knock on Treyarch's door and be like, yo, make a dope James Bond game. And they could do it.
I mean,
didn't they do
I would say
I believe so. I think it was the last one that they did.
I would say the bigger reach is that you're not going to have Activision, or you're not going to have them taking Treyarch off of Call of Duty to make a Bond game.
They're going to make this Bond game, but Treyarch. And yeah, it's going to, and like, because here's the thing too, Treyarch makes the best stories and narratives of any Call of Duty game. But what I think Treyarch also does is they make the best multiplayer of any of the Call of Duty games. Because Treyarch is also going to, from the ground up, rebuild Nightfire's multiplayer maps and multiplayer options and multiplayer suites, combine it with what they've done over a decade at Call of Duty, and make it into a giant James Bond Call of Duty multiplayer hybrid. It's going to be great. We're going to have the Ravine back. It's going to be lit. It's going to cross a little narrow bridge thing. Multiplayer perks, all the good jazz. And in terms of the campaign, yeah, I'm imagining this is the full back end of Activision Trek. It is a $60 AAA big budget marquee game that's going to put in like the fall map here. Like I'm envisioning it's going to be longer than a regular Call of Duty game. Like I imagine maybe close to like 15 hours. And yeah, we're getting like Daniel Craig himself is coming in, right? We're getting like I don't even know who's a big like Anne Hathaway is doing like Dominique's voice or whatever. We're drawing in names like they can with Activision because they got money. And then we're getting Troy Baker to be the bad guy because he'll kill it.
I love that we're both on the same page there.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
We'll figure it like Troy Baker will also somehow play the Rodney Dangerfield character in
I mean, he would do great.
The Rodney Dangerfield Eddie Murphy character. Yeah. And then Nolan North is just in there somehow, probably being Q if I had to guess. And yeah, like we have this like really fleshed out James Bond game because in my mind it's taken the like half step measure that was the Quantum of Solace video game from like 2008 or 9, which kind of had a bit more like developed story and actually kind of was like this kind of cool like conspiracy thing and like in between story between Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace, and it's just expanding that. It's blowing that wide open. It is going to be a first-person shooter, obviously, as basically every James Bond game is, except for like 3. And yeah, it's just gonna be this giant, sprawling, epic, like globe-traveling thing that I think will really tap into what I think makes Nightfire so cool, which is it's just you're all over the map and it's colorful and it's bright and it's funny, and like I think that they can tap into all these things. Like in my mind, I'm imagining like them combining like Call of Duty and Uncharted with each other a little bit, and, like kind of capturing the sense of humor of one, with a giant kind of scale and epicness of the other. But yeah, we are going to make a great James Bond video game, and it's gonna happen, and I believe in it. That's my pitch.
So my big question for you,
Give it, I'm ready.
Logan.
Yes.
How do you appeal and try and bring in the GoldenEye stands? Do you in the multiplayer suite? Do you give them like, hey, yeah, we're remaking Nightfire, but we're also gonna bring in classic GoldenEye levels that you can kind of play and you can play as Jaws and Oddjob or whatever. Like bring in kind of the characters from GoldenEye to help like maybe mend the fences between the Nightfire stands and the GoldenEye stands.
So yes, first off is yes. In my mind, again, we get multiplayer maps. We'll say like I don't know how many multiplayer maps any games have anymore. 4 from like Nightfire proper, like classic Nightfire maps just remade, and then we're gonna have 2 or 3, probably like 2 realistically. There aren't that many great GoldenEye maps. We're gonna have like 2 GoldenEye maps. We're gonna have like a GoldenEye map, or not a GoldenEye. We're gonna have like an Everything or Nothing map. We're gonna have an Agent Under Fire map. We're bringing all these classic PCR maps back into this game as like probably DLC if I had to guess. But we're bringing them back in and working them from the ground up too. And then also, because did I forget to mention, this game has single player DLC, and that single player DLC is having you play through a level or whatever, a chunk from GoldenEye, right? Like the tease is a lot of the classic kind of Bond movies, ones in like the 60s, 70s, and kind of the early 80s.
Yeah.
You'd get through the movie and then it would end and be like, James Bond will return, and then it would say the next movie's title. Nightfire hit credits, boom, we're winning, we're off in space doing our shit, done. And then James Bond will return in boom, 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 and it's like 007 GoldenEye or whatever kind of thing. And it's just like the actual trick is that like it's just not it's not a full blown game, it's just like a little like DLC thing. But yeah, it's basically one of those kind of like the opening kind of credit scene of a James Bond movie where like it has the opening 10-minute thing and then it cuts to the like title credits. It's essentially something like that, but as a single player DLC. So it's like a 2-hour kind of 1 hour long, whatever it might be, single player DLC through one of the levels from GoldenEye. And It'll be super. Maybe the jungle level from GoldenEye, probably the best level, or the antenna level. But it'll be basically you playing through a single player level from GoldenEye, which will be, just to keep those keeping track at home, the third remake of GoldenEye at least. But
Well, I think you
that.
could. I think you could have fun because like GoldenEye obviously would be the seller, but then I mean, with that idea, you could just have you could revisit just Bond's iconic missions, and you could do it. Bring in a level from Goldfinger or something, like movies that never got put in game form. You could have him. You could bring in a Sean Connery Bond for a level and a Roger Moore Bond for a level.
We're going to get the boat from Thunderball finally. It's like the yacht from Black Ops 2.
This is my thing, is that, because again, back in the day, the video game that I was more excited about than any video game in my entire life, it was literally my dream video game at the time when it came out in 2013, probably 2012, somewhere in that range, 2014 maybe, was 007 Legends, where that was the pitch. The pitch was, it's like James Bond is, again, we're just playing through his life. So we're going through, they have, a Goldfinger act, and they have, a Spy Who Loved Me act, and, a Moonraker act, and, an On Her Majesty's Service act. And they have, all these kind of, basically, a Bond from each of the actors playing through that kind of, section of the game, telling his kind of, story kind of thing. And then, have, one in the present day kind of thing. And it was holy shit, this is what I've always wanted. It's incredible. And that game was trash. It's it's one of the worst reviews I ever gave a game. It was a 3.5. It was broken, didn't work, it wasn't fun. They totally didn't understand what made those kind of moments in the movies cool. But that's kind of what we're doing here. But we're saying forget the movies for right now, because that didn't work out well. So we're just going to remake all the cool stuff from the video games. So yeah, we are going to have, I like to say it, Trevor. I'm taking it and running with it. We're going to have, 007 Nightfire video game, boom, it's done, rocked it out. DLC is GoldenEye, and then as the GoldenEye section is ending, the paid DLC, whatever you probably have to do, it ends, you finish the level, and it's cool, we get to replay through this section from GoldenEye back in the day, and then the villain from Agent Under Fire walks by or whatever, and it's boom, boom, boom. The real tease that this, it's part of a series now. And the second game is we're combining Agent Under Fire and Everything or Nothing into one game, and some giant game for the second installment. And we have the larger James Bond video game cinematic universe combined here, right? It's gonna be great. I like this. I like what you're pitching here, Trev.
Well, so that's where I was wondering, because I know you keep trying to, or you keep going with it, was okay, we're gonna do Nightfire, then the DLC will be GoldenEye, and then you could do Agent Under Fire and Everything or Nothing kind of rolled together. But where I was kind of wondering if maybe the best way to go with this, big picture, would be Master Chief Collection. This is the James Bond collection, and you're basically getting all 5 complete campaigns, and all the multiplayer suites are basically combined together.
My problem with that is that
he doesn't like GoldenEye. He doesn't want GoldenEye completely remade.
My problem with that is that these are AAA. I want these to be AAA. They were rebuilding this game from the ground up, obviously, and changing it.
That's what I'm saying too. Even if it's this game cost $1 billion, we made 5 games that all cost $100 million.
I want those 5 games. I want them in a series, right? I want it to be boom. We're getting Nightfire. You get a GoldenEye tease. Everything or Nothing, Agent Under Fire, bringing in Bloodstone, I guess, if you want to. That one seems a bit more like a lost cause, but you're bringing in all these games, and then again, in my head, you have Nightfire, and I'm already just happy enough. That's all I really need. But then we get Agent Under Fire, Everything or Nothing, either combined or not combined, right? And then the next installment after that is a brand new just game, not going back on the PS2 ones now. This is a brand new title now, and then that's where we're excited. Now we've rebuilt James Bond as a video game series, and we're off to the races, and it's very exciting. You can also, if you want to, for Nightfire, say, yo, fuck Daniel Craig, okay, fuck that guy. He's already out. He's kind of a dick anyway. Forget about him. We're bringing in a new Bond anyway, because we're going to have to, because he's going to leave after this movie no matter what. So we're just going to already kind of put in the guy who we think might be the new James Bond. And we'll have Henry Golden or whatever, John Woo, it doesn't really matter, come in and not voice James Bond and be the new James Bond. John Boyega, right, in a dream.
Idris Elba.
Idris Elba's too old. He's not going to do it. But John Boyega might do it. And so we'll have, like, whoever it might be come in and be the next James Bond. Ranveer Singh. Anybody, it doesn't matter. Come in and be James Bond, and it's going to be great. And that way we're, like, also, like, future-proof in the series where we have, like, cool, this guy's locked down for, like, 3 or 4 video games. We're going to take him voice. It's going to be great. Like they did for Pierce Brosnan back in the day. And then Daniel Craig was like, I hate video games. I'm not going to give him my voice to any of them. And he didn't.
Would you prefer to have it just be like the same actor in all the games and not do like an actual movie type thing where it is just like a different guy every single time?
So, again, it's a different guy after a few movies.
Right.
Again, we can cycle them out after every few things. That's fine. I don't really... I'm open... Again, in my mind, I would ideally like a trilogy of this. I'd like it to be Boom, Nightfire, combine 2 other PS2 games, brand new IP, ends that trilogy. Boom, James Bond can be really cool in video games again. After that, that other actor can leave. We can just make it Troy Baker, be James Bond like it's always been destined to be. Look at him, he's beautiful. And then he can have his own Troy Baker James Bond series.
I would like to see the world where Troy Baker plays James Bond and the bad guy.
So that's my thing. Yeah, again, do it. It's the long con. It's the long con this whole time.
Until
bad guy in one game, by the game like 3 or 4, he's just actually James Bond.
Yeah, and
fighting himself again.
By game 5, every voice actor is just Troy Baker.
That's what I want. Except for Nolan North also has like a cameo who just drops by in. But that's my pitch.
I mean, like in your GoldenEye, he can be Trevelyan.
Ooh, that's a really good one.
That
actually.
Would be fantastic.
That's a really good. That's an immediately really good. Yeah. Do that.
So, given that this is like Treyarch making a modern Bond, is there a battle royale
I was gonna ask
component to your multiplayer? Do you have a like MI6 is under siege and 100 or like everybody gets turned or something like that that leads all the Bonds to have to try and be the last Bond surviving.
I like your idea better than mine of just 100 James Bonds parachute onto an island.
I didn't individually envision that. What I think, because again, it's being Treyarch, is some sort of like zombie Bond thing.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say then what is the 007 zombies mode?
Yeah, right. Like and it's definitely set. No matter what, like it's set in MI6. Because that's such an iconic location. But like have it be set in MI6, the multiple levels basically like going down, like having like get the electricity to work so you can open the level to go down like another floor kind of thing, like classic kind of zombie mode. And then
I was gonna go like full camp with it and have it like in the Moonraker base.
Yeah, that would be cool.
So like, that would, I mean, again, they usually have like 3 or 4 different zombie mode maps. Yeah. And then my thing is that like the best kind of zombie Call of Duty things, the characters you're playing as are special, and this is where we go to the film James Bond. This is where you get the 4 players that you can play as for zombie modes are Sean Connery, Roger Moore, Pierce Brosnan, and Daniel Craig. And those are the 4 guys you play as in zombie mode.
Poor George Lazenby.
Yeah. And Timothy Dalton. It's some sort of weird thing. We're like, we're all together. It's a
Timothy Dalton is the like the master of all the zombies, maybe.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
go full.
Timothy Dalton
have
would
some
also
fun
like
with
that.
It from Hot Fuzz.
Yeah. Or Doctor Who, where he's also the master.
He is the master.
Yeah, he is. Yeah. Okay.
No, he's not. No, he's not the master.
He's the Time Lord, like president or something like that.
Yeah, he's like the head of the Time Council or something like that.
But yeah, have that be the case too, right? And like, I guess the thing, like. Again, Treyarch always has a lot of fun with their multiplayer stuff. So like them, I'm sure there'd be like so many Easter eggs, and there's some sort of like, there's a painting on the wall where it's like Sean Connery is Alan Quartermain from the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and like this kind of like, that's the dream, of just like all this kind of dumb shit, just like that, and like fucking Roger Moore from like The Love Boat or whatever movie he was in with Cuba Gooding Jr. and like all these things like. Yeah, that's
Daniel Craig from Knives Out.
Yeah, 100%. That's such an easy one. Yeah, like, and then again, yeah, like the different like
Brosnan and Mrs. Doubtfire or Mamma Mia.
Yeah, that's
right. And the different like apparent looks things that all the characters have in the multiplayer mode can just be these different outfits they've worn in other movies. I'm just saying, this is $1 million idea.
Well, I
Treyarch.
thought it was
So
interesting. You went with the. It makes sense you'd go with the different Jameses for that kind of mode because it. But I first thought of like, okay, who would you be? I was like, it wouldn't be James. It would be other people from like the franchise. And I don't know why I immediately was like, I would love to see like the man with the golden gun.
ooh, a villains mode.
Yeah, exactly. Because you could have like Odd Job, the man with the golden gun.
Jaws, Blowfield,
Oh yeah, Jaws, dude, he was my man.
Silva. Yeah. We got there are a lot of great henchmen in James Bond.
Kananga
Stay
Bloom.
tuned when we do James Bond review. No, it's gonna be. I'm very excited for Treyarch to make this video game, and I expect the royalties when it is made. So
Ian Fleming's
that's my
estate
pitch.
owes you a check.
They owe me a check for making this game. All right, so I mean honestly, like they might as well just go ahead and make me creative director. I mean, I'll be the next Cory Barlog. I'll sacrifice for the arts.
Is there a map or level or anything that involves the yacht from Thunderball? But I believe it was called the Disco Volante.
It was called the Disco Volante. Wow, that's a deep cut. You really like this yacht from the Thunderball. It's the second time you've mentioned it now.
It reminds me of the yacht from Black Ops 2. Like I feel like it's too easy not to just rip that map and call it something else.
Sure, I have no beef with that. I have no objections to that. Again, like the multiplayer maps is where you can have fun with just like either making them based off movies or making them based off levels from like Nightfire itself. I want there to be like actual Nightfire itself levels redone again, and just have fun with it. You know what I mean? Just have fun with the multiplayer mode, like Treyarch always does so well.
One of the questions I have, since I obviously have not played the Nightfire in its original incarnation, is multiplayer largely just like standard first-person shooter stuff, or is in Nightfire are gadgets, a key element of Bond's arsenal?
Single player wise, for sure they are. In Nightfire, multiplayer wise, you have stuff that you can do, but very easily you can transfer like all the perks you're getting it for like kill streaks can just turn into like gadget drops essentially. And like if you get like a 10 kill streak, you can get like the Sentinel, which is like a heat-seeking rocket that you can like actively control yourself. Like, yeah, like we can definitely have fun with the gadgets you can unlock as like perks and kill streaks for Nightfire, the video game, the remake.
Instead of like a gunship, you could get like the Aston with the machine guns in the front.
100%. Frank gets it. He understands.
Cool.
That's my
like
pitch. So again, Sony, Microsoft, Ubisoft, all the softs, never soft.
I was gonna say Ubisoft. Why are we bringing them into this?
Please call us. We have your next great games out here. But otherwise, that is the episode. Thank you so much for listening. Again, I would say shoutouts are just all the things that I referenced earlier in the week. Spawn on Me in particular was very, very, very good conversation. And we'll be sure to include that in the show notes. If you like what you heard, you can go support us over at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. I believe Trevor has officially revamped some of the Patreon tiers. So you can go check that out and see what is up there. I think that they all look pretty nice and fancy now, and I think that we do really good work over here at That Nerdy Site. So go check all of that out and all of the other shows we do. If you like what you heard for this podcast, please make sure to just do that. Like, subscribe, retweet, tell everyone, tell all your friends and family, grannies, and give us those reviews and 5 stars. It really, really, really does help with all of the, magic that our podcast ranking feeds. And, put us on Spotify if we're on Spotify. We are on Spotify. I've been told. Rate us on that. But anyway, you can find Frank at Irrelevant Jokes. Anything that you would like to plug or tweet about or mention, Frank?
No, not at the moment. Just appreciate you having me on. It was definitely a good time. I'm glad. I think we got some good pitches. I really wish a lot of these games were coming out.
We're gonna have a great. Yeah, this will definitely be. Yeah, I like this to do. And you'll be on many, many, many more times. So, yes, thank you, Frank, for joining. It's always a pleasure getting to talk to you. Trev, you can find at Trevor J. Starkey on the internet. Trevor, what do you got?
First and foremost, I echo the Spawn on Me. Go listen to that episode, and we'll include it in the description for this episode, so you can go find that very easily. In terms of our own stuff, Alex O'Neill joined Cameron and I for a special That D Plus episode this week, talking about Frozen, because Alex is the #1 Frozen fan I know, and so that is actually going out alongside this episode. So given that we took Tuesday off for kind of the Blackout Tuesday social media movement, where we didn't put anything out on the site that day, to allow kind of the Black Lives Matter voices to ring a little bit louder without us cluttering it up. So you can check that out as well.
I second everything Trevor said there. Go check out all those things, and you can find me at Lefty Logie on the internet. I will say that D Plus conversation, I'm sure, is one full of emotion, knowing all of the crew on that podcast.
It's easily our longest That D Plus show.
I am not shocked to hear that
course,
either.
Alex, it's a 2-hour show.
So go check that out. And then go listen to that Ultimate Video Game List show. It's very good. Cam Hawkins put it in my mind, and then I decided to listen to it again. It's a real good show. So
Season 3 coming soon.
Go check out all of the That Nerdy Site shows. We have so many. Basically, something is going live every day, and all kinds of written content as well. So be attuned to all of that. And then, we will not be posting anything yesterday when you listen to this for Blackout Tuesday. And like I mentioned earlier, and like Trevor's mentioned, be sure to stay tuned, stay safe, listen and seek out voices that are kind of explaining the situation. And until next time, you can find all of us where I just said. I'm not going to say them again. That Nerdy Site, at That Nerdy Site on the internet. Stay safe. Play games, kids.